Welcome to another episode of Data Strategy Unraveled. I am your host, Khendr'a Reid, part of the Data and AI Strategy team here at AWS. And today we're going to talk a little bit about generative AI, but specifically getting into what is that business architecture that is needed for enabling generative AI within an enterprise. And to help us with the discussion, I have a good friend here, Jason Hunter. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Khendr'a. Happy to be here. Looking forward to
Hey,
the conversation.
yeah, happy to have you here. So before we get into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're located, where you're dialing in from it today?
My name is Jason Hunter here. So I'm part of our worldwide data and AI strategy team, and so get to work with a great set of customers across various stages of maturity. Effectively, I'd say we help our customers either create, amend, or even accelerate against their data strategies.
Hmm.
And I would say that my role here in this function as a technology strategist is to really help our customers come up with prescriptive business aligned architectures to really kind of transform their technology into business value. Which is a great role. Love working with our customers,
Yeah,
and lots of good discussions that we have with them.
yeah,
So dialing in, I'm actually from New Zealand, sunny New Zealand. You may
mhm,
have heard of us, doing lots of great stuff out here, but acting big as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. So let's get right into it, right? You mentioned a little bit about this already. So when you think about that data platform, how should customers sort of think about that when wanting to enable Gen AI from that business lens, right? You mentioned the business
Mm.
architecture piece. What is that
Yep.
mindset change that needs to happen there when it comes to that?
Yeah, it's a good call out, and we started talking to customers around kind of reframing how they think about the data platform and thinking about it more so as the business operating system. And to your point, when you reframe it like that, it's changing the perception of um, who owns it and who should actually use it. And so, just like a computer operating system that facilitates the collaboration from your technical assets to the user experience that you have, to some degree, your data architecture should do something which is similar. So, meaning that it should be componentized, it should be agile, it should be modular. But one of the really the call outs or the real key aspects or dimensions of this as well is that the user experience should support different modes of operations and for different personas. So, an example is, 4 years ago or so, and to this day, I still see it as well. A lot of the data architectures were built with a very technical lens, and so that really only catered to a specific persona base in the organization. So traditionally, your data engineers and data scientists. But with generative AI, which has really kind of boosted the value of data now, most organizations are trying to course correct and adjust their architectures to be compatible with these, business users in the organization, which is quite a business change. And so by reframing it as a business architecture, when organizations are going through and either, modifying or, building out these new data architectures, they're now taking into account the whole business lens. So not just the technical users that they have, but also the business users. And the other key mindset change here is that the data architecture straddles the whole organizational landscape.
Mm,
So no longer are you having a department-led or owned set of capabilities, of analytics capabilities. It's a whole architecture that your organization uses. So all of the data products that your organization will build will leverage the same architecture and infrastructure instead of having these silos spread across the organization.
okay. So let's look at it a little bit more, right? So you mentioned that data architecture and how it essentially enables these different personas.
Mm.
What is that necessarily that platform blueprint, right? And how does these capabilities integrate together, right? I assume, with leveraging analytics and now looking at generative AI, you need some type of data foundation there as well. So how does all that come together?
Yeah, it's so the way I guess when I think about customers that are, let's just say, winning with data and AI, they have a very modular approach. And so some of the work that we do with customers is we help them understand what's right for them. And so what are those signals? And so we always talk about developing a slice of a solution that cuts through all of the layers that you actually need. So from the foundations, which is around your data storage, so the capabilities that you have there, around the governance, how you catalog it, how you make it accessible to people across the business, and then the different capabilities that you add on top. And so, a business-facing capability, top of mind would be generative AI. It might be just machine learning, and it might be analytics, or it might be just data product development. And so to facilitate that level of flexibility, you should think about your architecture as having these building blocks. So you don't have to build everything out all at once. The architecture allows you to build in or add in capabilities at the right time when the organization actually needs them. So as a real example, most organizations will have a data warehouse. They'll have a catalog tool, and then they'll have some type of business insights tool. As the organizations grow and they mature, they might add in an additional capability that offers machine learning capability. And so for there, they will introduce a user experience, which could be a notebook where their data engineers and data scientists are writing Python code and then developing models and so on. But then when they want to introduce the finance team or some business users to do the same thing as well, they are then able to add on additional capabilities or user experiences at the top, which are using the same building blocks. So for example, that might be a visual, no code or low code business application that will tap into their catalog, will tap into the data assets that they're allowed to have access to. But the engine or the capability that that finance team is using is something which is specific to them. And so having this flexibility allows you to add in additional capabilities when it's right for that organization to actually utilize them, and to also meet the different personas that you have in the organization. And of course, this is topical for the last couple of years because generative AI is one of those new capabilities. So organizations that have built their architecture to accommodate this modular approach have been able to add in generative services. And so, for instance, Amazon Bedrock as an example there, they've been able to leverage Amazon Bedrock to get access to a lot of the frontier models that we host on behalf of our customers, and then to use their existing capabilities to actually tap into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you raised a good point there about taking that slice and building that end-to-end capability. I see a lot of customers just trying to do the big bang approach and build out everything first before they deliver, some of those capabilities. And that just takes too long, right? And so we want to think about, taking a slice, a small piece, that we can deliver first that has those end-to-end capabilities and building off of that. Like you said, one of the pieces that you mentioned earlier that I want to come back to is those persona capabilities. Essentially, I think you mentioned before when we've been discussing the persona on-ramps. Can you talk a little bit about
Mm.
that and how that plays into a factor here?
Yeah, super important. Yeah, so part of the design for any business architecture, and which infers how your data architecture should materialize, is understanding where your organization is currently. And so, for instance, when we work with customers, we run a couple of workshops and activities to get these signals on behalf of the customer to be able to come up with these prescriptive business aligned architectures. And when we talk about on-ramps, it's basically making sure that when you are introducing or you're extending the data architecture within an organization, you want to make sure that you can catch as many people in your organization, right? Because you don't want to build, and seen this over the years, you don't want to build a data architecture or a capability that is only very narrow bound for a specific set of the user base. And so doing part of that audit, understanding the skills, the data literacy, and a couple of other things around where your organization and your staff are, allows us or allows organizations to basically add on those capabilities to support the different personas in your organization. So you can have as many people as possible being able to leverage the data and obviously derive value from it. So as an example here, even though you might be starting out and using generative services and you might be doing machine learning, you should also provide the means to have it so people that are using spreadsheets or kind of other tools where it's not code based, they should be able to participate in part of the ecosystem that you are building out here as well, because they will ultimately be the champions and the drivers that will derive the success of the platform. But so that kind of touches on the on-ramps, making sure that we are catering for everyone across the business, not only that kind of, that technical champion team. We want to bring everyone on board. And there will be an on-ramp and there will be a plan to, hopefully migrate as users get more familiar and get access to the data and kind of grow their data literacy as well. They can then grow into the additional capabilities that the data architecture provides. But the other aspect around the personas now that's useful to talk about is the kind of new persona that we're seeing in the market. And so, there's broadly, let's just say from a single persona lens, you've got technical users and business users. So that's making sure that you cater for them as part of the on-ramps. And then the new persona that we're seeing now is the agent persona. So agentic AI. So a lot of organizations are talking about using agents in their organizations, embedded in the data architecture itself, but then also as a member of staff, being able to, analyze and provide reports and do all of those types of things. And so the interesting thing here now is making sure that when you're starting out, or if you are working on adjusting your data architecture, look for those opportunities on where to make the changes across your data architecture to support that new persona now, which is that agent.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point there. Where can we sort of make those changes to enable these agents that a lot of customers are looking to leverage? What are some of how I guess let me take a step back there. How are some of the customers approaching this, right, that you're working with?
Yeah, it's they vary on where they are, and rightly so, because every customer is at a different level of maturity in their
Yeah.
thinking and the staff and the skills that they actually have there. But broadly, as we go through, and there's a couple of customers that I'm working with now that are already great. They're doing experimentation across the organization. It's a little bit in silo, but with the work that we're doing with these two customers, one that I'm thinking of specifically now, we're going in there and helping them come up with a capability matrix around the agents. And,
Mm,
and basically it's a framework, or it's a way of thinking about how to decompose the business problems or the opportunities that they're trying to focus on, and to decompose them into sub capabilities that agents kind of really rely on. So, for instance, helping them infer or understand for an agent, is it multiple agents or is it a single agent that we want to participate in this part of the business?
mhm.
And then when you're talking about agents specifically, breaking it down into aspects such as, what's the individual goals for the agents, what's the specific tasks that they are intended to do, things around guardrails and policies. So, what's the boundaries, what's the restrictions, what's the ethos of the company. So, the policies that they actually have and how they should think about, like being a member of staff almost. And then thinking down to the technical aspects. So having a look at the standards such as A2A, so agent to agent, and then also things like MCP servers. So looking for those opportunities where if you are looking to build out, an agentic framework or an agent use case, looking for the opportunity to say, this is a data set that we'd need access to. And then so, this is something that we can open up not only for us to build out this agent use case, but also for others in the business. And so adding these abstractions, open standard kind of abstractions like MCP over various data sets and so on, to make it easier, where ultimately you can, in your organization, get to this point where you've got all of the foundational building blocks in your data architecture to streamline the process of building out these agents and deploying them across the production environments as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's no one easy way to kind of explain what you just mentioned there. And I think a lot of customers are struggling with that approach, right? Of how
Mm.
they should start to think about it. What are the different capabilities, like you mentioned, being very prescriptive in what we're building here. Um, so Jason, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. I feel like we just scratched the surface on this topic, so we'll definitely have to have you back to dive a little bit deeper into this. For our viewers, be sure to put some links in the description to learn a little bit more about this, as well as we'll have some follow-up videos as well to dive deeper into this topic coming soon. So thank you all for joining, and thank you again, Jason, for taking the time today to join us on Data Strategy Unravel.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.